Mic check 1 2. I think we are good to go. Everybody, make sure to get the live announcement out on Twitch and in the GoFAST Racing Discord. So Snetterton tonight, a tricky one and not necessarily a fan or driver favorite. We are going to have, I'd say, a disproportionate amount of drivers sitting out tonight. That does not mean that we will not have a good race, and what that actually means is it is a perfect points scoring opportunity tonight. Should you maybe be in a bit of a deficit that you want to cover, it could be a big night for you to score some of those crucial points, especially early on in the season. Currently riding along with Francisco in the McLaren. Final corner here, very, very tricky. You want to run it out wide. But Snetterton, a very narrow track. It seems that it's about as wide, but when you look at the actual running room, there's barely enough room for 2 cars as Francisco sets the first time in the free practice session, a 148.498. And this track, I believe, a bit more a favorite for the European drivers, especially the UK drivers. They're more familiar with it, as I'm sure for many of our American drivers, they hadn't really heard of Snetterton until now. I mean, or until seeing it in ACC. I know that I hadn't really ever heard anything about Snetterton. I've heard about, you know, Donington Park and Oldham Park and Brands Hatch and things like that, but Snetterton is just one of those tracks. It's not really on many people's radar. So when encountering it in the rare instance it is raced on in ACC, and I say rare because not very many leagues or lobbies tend to use it, it's kind of like a learning how to walk again situation, as learning a track that you've never been on can tend to be very close here so far in AM practice between Peachy and Iceman. Very tricky, very technical, and it's completely flat. There's almost no camber out on the track to help pull the car around the corners, as Nate goes quickest, 148.462. Peachy really looking to try and score some points here. At this point in the session. Sorry, at this point in the season, as I pull up the standings for this season. And overall, so far in AM, Lingard, if I look at the correct season, Stubbly Squid actually leading Force Fate P2, Nightstalk P3, Rabel P4, Scary P5, Ethanol P6, Peachy P7, but it's still anybody's season, well and truly anybody's season. It's only a 20-point split pretty much from P1 down to P9, and that can change in an instant. And if we go over to the overall standings, right now Sylth MSA once again with a strong lead, as Marshall 88 with Great Lake Motorsport actually taking the top spot overall. And Phoenix Gecko in P2, that is the Nico Mimi Dark number 91 Top Gun Racing BMW. Slapshot in P3, Radioactive P4. Marshall 88 could really be a big factor in this as well. Radioactive, a 146.9. Radioactive currently P4 in that championship. Sylth has quite a large lead, but drop races will be calculated, so drop races becoming a factor in the championship is much closer than it seems. Scary looking to be very quick here around Snetterton, which should be really no surprise. The Lexus is going to make very good use of the two very long straights here at Snetterton, which I'm sure is in some way, shape, or form going to help the lap times. Welcome in, Labe, from the YouTube stream. Outside curb, turns 5 and 6. As I'm saying it, gets a hold of Scary. I was just about to say that the outside curb between turns 5 and 6 is really going to be a spot to catch many drivers out, and Scary is an example of that in the Lexus. Don't know if that's just comedic timing or the commentator's curse. Scary still trying to get that Lexus back out on track, and surprised he doesn't just come into the pit lane and just return to garage and go back out with a fresh car, but maybe want some practice recovering from that, as you can almost guarantee that it's going to happen during the race. Prieto with the new formed team, by the way, this far in the season, 5X Motorsports, joint effort between two very successful long-term veterans here with GoFAST Racing, Prieto and Slapshot, who I believe is not going to be making an appearance tonight, as we do have about 2/3 of our full grid here with us at Snetterton, which again, to no surprise, not a favorite track for many. But again, very good opportunity for drivers who are really trying to bridge the gap to another driver who wouldn't have done so well here, or maybe would have had potential to win but not going to win because they choose not to race tonight. There are 2 drop races that can be taken at any point throughout the season, whether or not you need to miss a race, can't make a race, or have a poor result. You can go ahead and drop that race, as many of the drivers throughout the season will actually run the full season and just choose to take their worst races as a drop. Scari's still quickest in the AM class in the Lexus, and I believe he has come back into the pit lane and gotten a freshly repaired car. At least I would assume so. I think there may actually still be a bit of damage on the front of that Lexus RCF GT3. And Force Fate which is currently P2 in the AM championship so far, as once again gets caught out by that turn 5 and 6 outside curb, and actually makes a very clean cut across the infield, and is just going to redo that section of the lap. Sylth now jumping up into the conversation at the top again. This is just free practice. Sylth handling the exit curb just past turn 5 nicely. About 3/4 of a second off of the time set by Radioactive, but again, does not matter. Still early on in tonight's racing. It is just practice. We do have our split qualifier coming up. 10 minutes to the AM field and 10 minutes to our pros. The AMs will take to the track first. Grant actually goes quickest so far in free practice for the AM split. About 1/10 and a half quicker than the Lexus of Scari. And Grant currently sitting in P8 in the AM Championship. Now sitting P1 so far in free practice. Radioactive is, I believe, going to end his practice session early, and Marshall 88 also in the McLaren. Former teammates Radioactive and Marshall 88. Marshall going with a privateer effort instead of rocking with the purple and black XCL colors. The solo effort seeming to do fairly well so far throughout the season. Did very well in Season 6 and now in Season 7. Really starting to make a splash, especially being so new to GFR. Not new to racing, and not new to racing with this bunch, but new to racing here with GoFAST Racing, but still quite quick enough to be very competitive. Marshall 88 currently running P2, Sylth P3. You have Prieto Dive Bomb Danny down in P5. Scary going off at the penultimate corner one more time. But you look up and down the grid, you see, oh, maybe that guy's 2 seconds off of that time, or that guy's 1 second off of that time, or that guy's 3 seconds off of that time right now. You take any one of these drivers and you stick them in just about any other league that you can find, and they will either podium, dominate their class, finish a respectable position. These are no slouches whatsoever, even all the way down the AM class. Majority of these AM drivers would go win championships with any other league, pretty much hands down. Peachy actually quickest now in AM, 1.6 seconds off of the time set by Radioactive, but leading AM by about 2.5 tenths of a second. And I forgot to fix my overlay. Now it should look right. Allergies killing me a bit this week, so I may sound a little nasally. Nate P with Too Slow Racing making a return back with us after a short hiatus. Just about a minute left in free practice before we get started with our split qualifying. Big lift from the Mercedes of Ethanol coming through turn one. And we'll get some riding in the onboard here in a second once we get started with our qualifying. For those tuning in, if you are not following the Twitch channel or subscribed to the YouTube channel, I'd greatly appreciate it if you did either. And if you're watching on YouTube or end up watching the YouTube VOD later on in the evening or later on in the week, I'd appreciate it if you'd maybe drop a comment and see what your favorite part is. Tell me what your favorite part is and like the video if you would not mind. Adrian, thank you for the follow. As we have now reached the end of free practice, Dive Bomb Danny, currently the quickest of the pro drivers, still out on track recording laps. And will be the next across the line. The 427 of Nate will be coming through the final few corners as well. The 30 McLaren of Peachy, I believe, going to be the last driver out on a valid lap, and a bit of a pit lane entry practice for Dive Bomb Danny and Rabel in the Porsche. And we'll hop back on board with Peachy, rounding out the end of our practice session. And across the line, that will bring an end to our practice. And now we will be rolling with AM qualifying. Who's going to be out first? It does look like it is going to be the 68 Lexus of Scary out first. And with no Slapshot here with us tonight, who is going to be the first of the pro drivers to try and get to the front of the queue in pit lane to be released whenever the AM qualifying is over? Nobody as of right now queuing up at the end of the pit lane, but they will be. Force Fate 1-2 watch in the McLaren. Really looking to make a run at the AM Championship in his rookie season here with GoFAST Racing. Lynch in the Mustang just behind, looking to make an impact tonight as well. But Scary and Peachy, the two favorites so far in AM. Peachy just now coming out of the pit lane, right behind the number 27 Porsche of Rabel. Granados and Bubblicius still in the pit lane. To be Scary will be the first one across the line, coming into the very tight turn 8 and 9 section. The uphill chicane that kind of throws you out of it as you come over the top of the hill. And I'd say if there's any track where drivers are really going to be using the steering wheel in both directions coming through a one-direction corner, it will be here at Snetterton. A lot of tracks have a bit of camber to kind of pull the car through the corners. There is very little to be used here at Snetterton. Hammer down across the line. Going to be hard to keep up with the Lexus down the long straights here. Chucking it into turn 1. Getting a slightly wide, going too wide. Actually, that will invalidate the first lap. So at least for the time being, Scary will not set the time to beat in practice. Does not mean that he won't, as there is still plenty of time left in practice, and actually going to pull on to the side and allow the McLaren of Force Fate to go by, who is now going to be at least in the running to be the first driver to set a lap time in not in free practice, in qualifying. Saw the bit of sparks coming out from the underside of that McLaren where it is scraping against that outside curb. That outside curb actually causes the cars to bottom out against the chassis, and that is what kicks the rear of the car out. Especially as you're trying to transfer your weight back over to the other side. You're trying to pull the car around out of turn 5, running onto that outside curb to carry the momentum, carry the speed. But then the car bottoms out, you lose complete control of the rear, and around you go, either off to the outside, more than likely though it is off to the inside. And you are essentially spearing into oncoming traffic if you miss the inside wall. Coming through the forever right-hander of turn 11, and then the very quick left-hander of turn 12. Across the line. It's a long way waiting for the start-finish line. A 1:48.185 from Force Fate is the time to beat. The the 63 of Lynch next across the line, about 5 seconds off. That is a large gap to try and close. It is quickly filled by Sibley, Squid, and Clint in the Ferrari. Iceman jumps just ahead of Clint into P2. Both Clint and Iceman about half a second away from Force Fate for the time being. A big moment from Zoanon behind. I don't know if that lap is still going to be valid or not. Really seemed like he drugged the front end of that Aston Martin out of turn 1. Ethanol up to P2 and only 47 thousandths of a second the difference, and absolutely pushing hammer down on this lap coming into turn 1. And the Mercedes seems to be right at home here in Snetterton. Just got to close that gap, which is really not much time to try and find. Scari, who was one of the favorites heading into the session, same with the number 30 McLaren of Peachy, as Bob Lucius goes off on the left-hand side of the track. Rejoins and just has to give it another go for that fastest, or for the time in qualifying. Potentially the fastest time, but just having trouble getting that GTR to really respond in the corners here at Snetterton. Not the best handling car. It's very quick in a straight line. That is one of its strong suits, but you have to get that front end to cooperate. And as of right now for Bob Alisius, that front end is not cooperating. Peachy looking to set a quicker lap here, or set a quick lap here. Welcome in, Slap. Hope we put on a good show for you tonight. Go on into the Discord, rile up the other GFR boys that may be sitting down. Bring them on into the Twitch chat, and let's have a good time tonight. Ethanol now 15 thousandths of a second. The difference between himself and Force Fate made up 32 thousandths of a second in that gap. Really thought that if he improved on that lap at all, it would be enough, but no, just a little bit more work to be done. Welcome in, Aramich. Or really just Mitch. Over on the YouTube side. Going a touch wide, and that is not going to make this lap any quicker as Force Fate makes the job harder. 147.8 now the time to beat. Scari does get a time set, about a quarter of a second, a little less than a quarter of a second to try and close now. Force Fate is showing consistency, but he's more so showing speed. I don't think he quite had the run that he wanted at Paul Ricard, but I mean, Paul Ricard is just Paul Ricard. Peachy goes quicker, a 147.472 now the time to beat, and a large gap now to be closed by Force Fate, who is still yet to qualify. Rabel in the Porsche is going to have one more opportunity to get that lap in, but Peachy now all eyes, as Peachy really is one who needs that Needs that run for the top spot in AM. Just has not been able to find it. Has been in contention quite a bit, just has not been able to complete the task. And Peachy not going to improve on this lap. Scary does bridge the gap though. And we'll have another lap to try and give it a go. The pro field is nice and queued up at the end of the pit lane. Who is leading that field? It looks to be, well, Slap, that's your teammate learning from the best. Taking that first spot in the qualifying queue at the end of pit lane. Clint up there into P3, knocking Force Fate down to P4. Really going to have to push on this lap. And they decided to take their time as the pro field rolls out onto the track. But the times are tumbling in AM. First across the line will be Force Fate, who is trying to find really 0.4 of a second to close the gap to the rest of the podium there. Clint needs 1/4 of a second. Scary needs 1/10.5. And all three drivers know Clint into the pit lane. I think invalidated the lap, decided to just pull over and end his qualifying session. Across the line for Force Fate, will it be good enough? He's still hammered down, not pulling to the inside. Will he be quick enough? Will he at least get one position? He does get one position, 68 thousandths of a second slower than Peachy, but what about Scary? Does he have an answer for the both of them? Currently 1/10.5 behind. Does he improve? He does, but only by 100th of a second. Goes quicker than Force Fate. So Scary up to P2. Do have the 94 BMW of Iceman, the last driver in AM out on track. Needs a few tenths to try and get another position. That would be P6, and is not going to go for it. We'll just pull into the pit lane. We'll hop on board with Prieto while we take a look at our AM qualifying. Peachy P1, Scary P2, Force Fate P3, Clint P4, Grant P5, Ethanol P6, Iceman P7, Stubbly Squid P8, Zoanon P9, Christian B P10, Granados P11, Lynch P12, Boblisius P13, and Rabel no time set. Back of the field in P14. Now it is crunch time. As Prieto is going to try and bridge the gap. What kind of gap are we looking at in the overall championship? Prieto down in P6. Now, drop race is calculated. He's not far out of the conversation points-wise, but he is a bit further down the order than he usually is and than he usually would like to be. It is going to be very sweaty in AM. And Stubbly, you are directly in the center of it. We'll wait for Prieto to come across the start-finish line, and then we will ride on board with a lap of the two-time previous championship winner here in GoFAST Racing. The first ever to do the double, the repeat, and it was a repeat drivers and repeat team championship. And a 146.7, currently the quickest time for our pro field. Marshall 88 up to P2. And our AM field seems to be fairly quick. As of right now, 6-7 pros have qualified. We've got 6 AM drivers that are very much in the midst of that field. Dive Bomb Danny up to P4. Again, the Lexus is going to be very strong here as long as you can handle it through the technical sectors. Sylph up to P2. One more lap, and it looks like he's going to be just quick enough. Getting a big bite of that inside curb from Prieto. Now coming through turn 6. You hear the rear tires of the car sliding. You're trying to fight the traction control. Have it low enough to where it helps you, but not too high to where it kills your momentum, kills your speed. And now hammer down the backstretch. A long, long backstretch, but you got to look for the braking zones just as you come under the bridge. And that uphill blind chicane with a massive sausage curve up the inside. You hit that sausage curve, you might as well be an airplane because you are taking off. And now the little bit of camber that is on the track before you come into the off-camber, long, long, long right-hander. For the very, very quick, very flat left-hander to finish the lap. Try to get back on the throttle, try to carry as much speed as possible, and you come across the line. He found a 900th of a second, but not enough. Currently a clean 10th of a second behind Radioactive, currently in P1. And again, a smaller showing tonight, but all that means is opportunity for those who are out here on track. Some drivers not going to be picking up any points tonight. This is maybe a track you excel in, or you see an opportunity to pick up where some are going to be leaving. Very good opportunity to get some crucial points in the championships tonight. Well, Stubbly Slap said that that was not in the contract, so there's not really much I can do about that. He said there was no supplemental labor written into my clause. Currently, just over 2/10 of a second between the top 5. Top 7 within half a second, and the top 13, really, the top 12 within 1 second. And Peachy right now has a pro driver between himself and his direct AM competition. And what that is really going to mean is that Peachy, as of right now, has Scary directly behind him. Now, Peachy has a bit of work to do in the AM Championship, but Scary, I believe, is in a pretty good spot. Actually, Scary and Peachy are very close to each other. Stubbly Squid actually currently leading the AM Championship. Force Fate P2. Knifestalk P3, Rabel P4. Rabel, starting from the back, is really going to have an uphill battle to fight as he's got to fight his way through the AM field on a technical track that not many of the drivers are going to have a ton of experience with. Marshall 88 goes quickest, a 146.270. Hope Blue in P2, then Radioactive P3, Dive Bomb Danny P4. Now Sylph was P5, jumps back up to P2. And Nate in P9, Dingham in P11. And again, inseparable, the two slow Lexus drivers. They run nose to tail all season, every race, one behind the other. You'd think they coordinated it, but I think they're just the perfect teammates, as they run together really the entire time, as long as one of them doesn't get caught in an incident or have a penalty. Minute left in pro qualifying. Prieto, currently P6 in the NSX, now has quite a long way to go doesn't mean that he's going to be out of contention during the race, as he is definitely now going to be in contention of the race. Steals the pole position away for the time being, a 146.110. Do we see lap times down in the 20 or the 45s? Marshall 88 up to P2 or up to P3. Was P2. Radioactive goes quicker. 0.04 of a second between Radioactive and Prieto, and Prieto holds on to it. Who is going to be done with their qualifying? We have had a couple drivers come in. Lingard going to be done, not going to be able to get back. Actually may just barely have enough time to get across the line. Francisco, this will be his final lap. And the number 91 of Phoenix Gecko will be starting his final lap as well. Hope Blue P3, Marshall 88 P4, Sylph P5. Some very late shakeups in qualifying. And Hope Blue on his final lap is not going to be able to improve, so it's not going to be an MSA pole position, at least from Hope Blue. There is still the possibility for Sylph. Goose still out on track in the BMW, will be the next to cross the line behind the number 55 McLaren of Francisco, but he comes into the pit lane and will finish his qualifying session. Dive Bomb Danny still out in the Lexus, but that lap has been invalidated, and he will bring that Lexus into the pit lane. Next across the line will be the number 787 of Radioactive. Prieto has come into the pit lane. He is not going to be able to improve, so P2 will be the best that he can do for now, but I think there's a few others out there who would like to try and take that position away. Goose, a second off of the pace right now of the pole sitter. Currently P8, stays P8, but finds a little over a quarter of a second. Radioactive tries to make it a harder job to steal. No, comes into the pit lane and will end his qualifying session. Next across the line will be the number 34 Lexus of Dingham with the 443 BMW of Sylph. Now the BMW of Sylph is really one driver you have to watch out for taking the spot at the very end of the session now. Dingham currently P11. We'll see where he qualifies, if he goes quicker than his teammate. No, stays P11, and Sylph goes quickest, steals the pole position at the very end of the session, and Sylph on pole as Goose comes into the pit lane. Take a look at our running order. Sylph, Radioactive, Prieto, Hope Blue, Marshall 88, Dive Bomb, Danny, Nico Mimi, who is Phoenix Gecko, Goose P8, Nate P9, Peachy P10, Dingham P11, Scary P12, Force Fate P13, Clint P14, Grant P15, Ethanol P16, Francisco P17, Iceman P18, Stubbly Squid P19, Zoanom P20, Lingard P21, Christian B P22, Granados P23, Lynch P24, Boblisius P25, Jones P26, and Rabel P27. I think Jones may have had a disconnection but got back in the session and will be lining up at the back of the grid. Don't go anywhere. We will take a quick break and we will be right back for the formation lap. It is going to be a wild race, to say the least. A very wild race. But Sylph has gone back up to the top. He's not going to have direct help from the teammate of Hope Blue, who is going to be kind of offset from Sylph. And yeah, I do agree this race is going to be a bit rough. About a minute left in the break between the race and the qualifying session. Peachy at the front, who is going to have Scary and the Lexus immediately behind. And then Scary really leading the next big group of AM drivers. Francisco and Lingard are just going to be shuffled back in with the AM field, and they'll have to try and fight their way through. And Sylth leads us off the line for the beginning of the formation lap. Welcome back anyone who may have been watching an ad, as we are now ready to go. Sylth, Radioactive, Prieto, Hope Blue, Marshall 88, Dive Bomb Danny, Nico, Mimi, Goose, Nate P. I believe all of the top 8 have won a race. Nate with the Too Slow Lexus, making his return from his short hiatus. Could have a good opportunity, as that Lexus is going to be passing cars. As long as he can get close enough, we'll be passing cars like they're nothing down the long straightaways. Radioactive, we have a couple drivers starting from the pit lane. It looks to be Radioactive and Force Fate. I don't know what happened with those two, but they're going to be starting from the pit lane, and that is really not good news for Force Fate, but that's good news for everybody else in the AM field. It's especially good news for Stubbly Squid, who's here with us in chat. Actually, no, he's not. He's out on track, my bad. Currently, the AM Championship leader. Stubbly Squid going to have some help in maybe extending that lead, especially with his closest competitor of Rabel starting at the back of the grid, but he does have Scary, who is not far out of competition. Again, still anybody's championship, but not far away. Scary immediately behind the AM leader. Peachy looking to make the most of it tonight. This is going to be his best opportunity all season to get a crucial win in AM and score a ton of points very early on. Sometimes momentum is all you need to try and propel yourself to the top. As we line up 2 by 2 coming into the final corner. Once again, thank you all for tuning in. If you're not following on the Twitch channel, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that follow button. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, like the video. Again, I would greatly appreciate it. And Silth actually going to be starting on his own at the front after, I believe, the 787 of Radioactive will be starting from the pit lane. So Silth just having to defend at the front of the field. And green, 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 we are racing here at Snetterton. GoFAST Racing Season 7, Round 3. And try and keep everything nice and tidy. We do have an off, and it's the Mercedes of Ethanol. Just completely lost it on his own. What about at the front of the field? I think everything seems to be all right, but immediately fighting as Nate gets touched off. I'm not sure where that contact was caused. I hope it wasn't from his direct teammate. But Nate goes on around. And there's more contact behind. Hope Blue and the Lexus of Dingham get involved. And the stewards are going to be looking at that one. We've got more contact behind Lingard. Sorry, that was Christian B goes around. Lynch and the, not Lynch and the Mustang. Who is that in the other Mustang? It's actually the AM championship leader of Stubbly Squid. Again, I was talking about championship implications, and this is massive championship implications when your championship leader is essentially crashed out of the field at the beginning of the race. Somebody called it in Twitch chat earlier that it was going to be carnage in this race. I believe it was Granados. And while he was part of that carnage, he was absolutely correct. Prieto will be trying to run down the BMW of Silth. Marshall 88 directly in the slipstream behind. And the 787, who had to start from the pit lane, Radioactive, off at turn 9. Right there at turn 10, does get it back onto the track. And Prieto immediately having to go defensive. This track also one to keep those tires warm, so tire wear really going to be a major factor. The constant just left, right. The straightaways are your only opportunity to try and cool the tires. And it's warm enough out there regardless, 32 degrees Celsius to track temperature. Bushman, I have sad news. Dive Bomb Danny is up there in the Lexus, and Scary fighting for P2 in the Lexus, but the all Lexus team, both drivers having incidents early on. And they are now going to have to claw their way through the Amfield. As what happened there, I believe Nate made contact with Bobalicius and the Mercedes of Granados, but then ended up saving both of them by making contact. And what would have almost been a 3-car incident turns into a no-car incident. So maybe Team Lexus is the miracle team to be on. But the two slow Lexus are going to need a miracle to try and fight their way back up to the top 10. Silth already pulling a 2-second gap as no competition at the beginning of the race. What has happened to Prieto? Wonder if he maybe got pushed off somewhere. Has now fallen back down to 14th. Again, it's a very narrow track. It doesn't look like it, but the racing line and really the drivable part of the course is not very big. A massive incident up ahead. The McLaren of Francisco and the McLaren of Hope Blue both having incidents, and that is actually going to be a retirement from the MSA McLaren of Hope Blue. So now Silth, the race leader, not going to have any sort of teammate help whatsoever. And we'll see if Francisco ends up retiring or just puts it back in the garage, try and repair it, bring it back out later. and at least score some points tonight. It is going to lose a couple laps in the process. Peachy still leading 1.5 seconds to the Lexus of Scari. It now has a large gap to Clint in the Ferrari in P3. An awesome job so far from Clint. Keeping his nose clean, got that Ferrari into a podium position with a pro driver of Lingard behind. Former AM competitor, graduated at the beginning of this season after winning the AM championship in season 6. And Grant in the BMW, very quick in qualifying. Just needs to try and claw those positions back. Currently P4 in AM and the other AM BMW of Iceman in P5. If there will ever be a tale of teamwork, it's going to be between these two slow Lexus, as the Aston Martin of Zoenom yields to them as they will begin to row their way back to the front. It's going to be an uphill battle. These two work together like no other. Again, nose to tail, and it seems to be that they just can't really finish a race far apart from each other. It's like they've got a chain linked between the two of them. But as they're now back together, they'll just be able to claw their way back up the field using each other's slipstream. Pretty evenly matched in terms of pace, so they should just be able to cooperate with each other. Not really going to be racing each other too hard. Prieto, talk about racing hard though, trying to gain positions back. Finds a way past the Ferrari, and that's the Ferrari of Clint. What has happened to the Ferrari of Clint was in P3. I was giving him praise, and I hope that I didn't cause him to go down a couple positions, but maybe the commentator's curse once again showing its head, an ugly head at that, as Clint now relegated to P5 in AM, but not too far away from the two AM BMWs, just a bit further ahead. Phoenix Gecko in the Top Gun Racing BMW. Currently P3. And clawing closer and closer to the McLaren of Marshall 88. Had the fastest lap. Marshall 88 actually takes that fastest lap away. And Dive Bomb Danny in the Lexus still in the conversation as well. Goose in P5 overall actually has the AM leader of Peachy, who's just going to sit in that slipstream the best he can and try and just pull away from Scari in the Lexus. BMW a quick car in the straight line, and if Goose can just stay a little bit quicker than Peachy, just enough for Peachy to reel him back in down the straights, that would be perfect for Peachy, as he can try and outrun the much quicker down the straights Lexus RCF of Scari, who is trying his best to reel in the McLaren of Peachy. Phoenix Gecko still trying to reel in Marshall 88. The gap just seems to be holding though. Was 9/10 on the previous lap, 9/10 on this lap. And now the field settles. Again, Goose and Peachy, as Peachy actually seems to be pulling away from Scari. The gap was 3 seconds on the lap prior, now 3.6. now starting to battle here, and this is going to be your battle for podium. The AM class, the AM split has really been where the battles have been all season. We've now got a 3-car race between Iceman, Grant, and Clint. Clint was in P3, had a bit of an incident, moved back down the order. Now he's reeled these 2 BMWs back in. As long as he can keep his nose clean, and talk about reeling him in, starting to reel the pack in. Nate and Dingham and the Lexus are going to try and navigate their way through this 3-way AM battle. Things may get interesting here in the mid-pack very shortly. We do have mandatory pit stops that should come in about 10 minutes time. See if we have any early takers or not. So far, no one has come into the pit lane, which is not surprising. You really want to try and use these tires up while you have them. Really run them as long as you can. Snetterton, not easy on tires. Again, it's a flat track, not much elevation, not much camber. This long right-hander is really off camber, so you're really using the traction that the tires provide, the mechanical grip, and really whatever aerodynamic grip you may have. But the tires will be getting very warm here as the stints go on. You want to try and cool them as much as you can down the long straights. There's only so much that you can do as you open up those brake ducts. Nate has now reeled in the Ferrari of Clint, who may start to fall back from the BMWs. Big moment there from Nate in the Lexus. See that cloud of dust kicked up as Nate went a touch wide through turn 3. Getting much closer here between the 2 BMWs of Grant and Iceman. If Clint allows the 2-slow duo in the Lexus to go by, well, they do have each other's slipstream. They may run away from him. He can at least tag along with that slipstream, and he also wants those 2 slow drivers to close up to these 2 BMW at the front. Iceman got a bit of that sausage curve on the inside of the final corner that is actually going to hinder his exit speed quite a lot. Iceman covers the inside. Grant wants to try it the long way around the outside. Almost didn't make it. Had to reel that BMW in, and now these 2, as they start the battle, who's coming right back into the picture, the trio behind of Clint and the 2 slow Lexus. This is also a battle to get back into the top 10. Checking back in with the podium. I wonder if Silth has made a slight mistake. That gap was 2 seconds and growing. Now back down to 1.3. Has the pace kind of come out of that BMW as we get further on into the first stint? Marshall 88 and Phoenix Gecko both trying to reel in the race leader. And at least from the turn 9 point of view, both Marshall 88 and Phoenix both seem to be a bit smoother at corner exit. I think Silth may be feeling the pressure starting to push in that BMW, seeing that Delta start to fall. And now things are starting to get a bit antsy here as Nate and Dingham have both fully caught up to this 3-way battle in AM. And the high RPM V8 of the Lexus RCF GT3. This thing is a demon in a straight line. as he's got the slipstream of Clint. Is he going to get close enough getting into turn 1? He's going to go for the move, or at least try and feign the move. Move may be happening up ahead. No, Grant goes bouncing off into the grass against the outside fence, just trying to hold on to it, but no, he's going to come across and enter the racing surface. And Iceman breathes a very short sigh of relief as he now has Clint with a second win. No BMW in front of him, but goes a bit deep. Is that going to allow Nate in the Lexus to try and close that gap up? Getting very, very wide, dangerously wide. Nate wanted to try the late move. It's not quite going to happen. Dingham will assume the position ahead of the teammate after the late braking attempt. And kind of tapping in and tapping out as Dingham now plays lead gunner. What has happened to the BMW of Iceman? Had a mistake and has now gone off, and look at that, Clint is back into P3. And Clint is technically in competition for the overall championship, as all drivers are competing for overall points. Clint now with the two Lexus drivers behind, I don't think would be too extremely keen to try and defend the positions with everything he's got. But that doesn't mean that he won't. And no, he'll go later on the brakes and allow the two Lexus drivers to go on through. And he will try to follow, as they'll have that slipstream that he can try and just hang on to. It's not going to be very easy. The number 700 of Bob Alicius having a bit of an off. It is actually going to come into the pit lane early, repair the car, and get that that damage repaired. And Marshall 88 now definitely reeling in Sylth. 0.8 of a second the gap. We're still going to have to monitor this battle between Clint and Iceman. It's going to get very tight coming out of the final corner, and Clint is actually going to take that opportunity to come into the pit lane as we now have our first true cycle of pit stops. Lingard the first to come in for Pro, and Clint the first to come in AM. Marshall 88 starting to reel in Sylth, and these two have raced each other across many different racing series for a very long time, and not really getting much of the apex there. It does seem to be that maybe the tires have come off of that BMW. Still staying out I guess I didn't notice it, but Lynch has come into the pit lane as well and now come out. So Boblisius, Lynch, Lingard, and Clint have all come into the pit lane. Lingard in the Mustang yielding. As Dive Bomb Danny in the Lexus, who is still just trying to stay in competition with Phoenix Gecko just a bit further ahead. Looking at it right now, though, it's a good point scoring opportunity for the Top Gun racing duo. And after the pit stops, we'll have to wait and see where they cycle through. But the Lexus duo have made their way back into the top 10. Radioactive is going to try and do whatever he can to change that fact. But Nate, now playing rear gunner, will try and keep the 787 McLaren behind. I think they know he's quicker. They're going to make him work for it to try and find a way past. And blocking the inside and not getting any slipstream. Radioactive would have to try and go for the dive bomb into turn 8. Not really somewhere you'd want to go to it, as you'd just be setting yourself up for failure being on the outside at turn 9. Phoenix Gecko comes into the pit lane, so does the number 28 BMW of Goose. Is a Top Gun Racing BMW double stack. Prieto stays out, who is now down in P7, will be promoted to P5 for the time being. And Marshall 88, who was closing up on Silt, has now let that gap open back up to almost 2 seconds again. Iceman in the 51st State BMW comes in, will try and gain some positions in the pit lane, and the 33 of Lingard off and in the wall and returns to the garage as we now officially halfway through this race. That is going to be a retirement for the Mustang of Lingard, unfortunately. I don't know exactly what the incident was, but it seemed like the car had stalled out nose first into the infield wall. Right there at the, I believe that would have either been at the exit of turn 3 or the exit of turn 5. And now the split pit that the Too Slow duo tend to do. Dingham goes first as Nate P stays out and tries to hold back the 787 McLaren of Radioactive. Seems to be working for now. Dive Bomb Danny in the Lexus comes into the pit lane as well. Dingham out of the pit lane. Let's see, does. As we, I believe, are having a massive drop in drivers, massive disconnection. We are halfway through the race, but we have lost a good bit of our grid. They are rejoining. We just lost a lot of drivers. So this race may be called at the halfway point, half points, as we have run over 50% of the race. I believe that is going to be a massive G-Portal outage, and Sylph may be awarded a win here, as the results would have been tallied a couple laps ago for the mass disconnection. There are some drivers who are getting back out on track, but we will wait and see what the official word from race control will be. Which is very unfortunate, because we were having a great race, and we are still having a great race between Sylph and Marshall 88. Well, Niles, we are nearing the end of the life cycle of ACC. I hate to admit it, but we don't know, or at least I don't know, how much longer we have with this sim, with this platform. As I understand, Kunos have said that they have not completely abandoned it, but with the two new projects that Kunos has announced, I think we know where their priorities stand. Especially with this game running on, I believe, an expired license, an expired SRO license. And it's not an expired license, as I believe that is Iceman, and the BMW goes off, and the 985 of ethanol involved as well. As Rabel comes on by. Again, we will wait and see what the official word from race control will be, but I think we're going to finish this one out. Sylph comes into the pit lane. Marshall 88 will try and stay out and push. I guess that's right, it's not expired, because we had been getting updated livery packs for the cars. We just do not have all the cars, and we will not have all the cars. I believe we are still missing an Aston Martin Evo and the Corvette as well. The Z06 GT3R. I believe there may have been some Evos of the GT4 cars as well. Big slides coming out of the rear of Marshall 88's McLaren. Sylph is back out on track. Down a few positions. Marshall 88 still currently scored the leader. Granted, the BMW comes in. Again, I think we are just racing to continue to just finish the session that we have begun. But the official results tally will probably be taken at the time of the server crash, which was right around the, I believe, the 21 minutes left to go in the race. 21 or 22 minutes, so just over the halfway point. Not sure if it will be half points, three-quarter points, or full points awarded. But for the time being, we continue to race. Slapshot, if you are still with us, or Mitch or anybody, if you're still with us in chat, if you can give us an update in the in either the Twitch or YouTube chats on what we're doing race result-wise. Marshall 88 going to have to come in shortly. Radioactive as well. Silth, who will likely be given the win based on when the server crashed, and it may come down to a vote in the Discord server after the race on what the official result tally will be. As again, this was a pretty big race in the season for many of the drivers, as it was a big opportunity to score points with a lesser field, as we have had about 10 drivers sit out of this race. And add a few retirements on that, we will have 20 cars finish as we come across the line here in a few minutes' time. As we just hear the battle between Ethanol and Grant in AM. Marshall 88 in the pit lane. Radioactive comes into the pit lane as well as the 443 of Silth. We'll try and get past. Marshall 88 is now rolling. Is he going to be able to cover it off, though? No. Silth will fly on by, as Marshall 88 is just now getting up to speed. And that gap is actually going to grow quite a bit. Silth just holding his pace while Marshall 88 was in the pit lane, and we've got about 13.5 minutes left in this race. Silth's just showing his dominance. Very dominant driver. He does have to work for it. He does make mistakes. It's not like he is just flawless, perfect every time. But he's got enough practice, got enough experience that this is really just second nature to him, and the wins come naturally. MSA Racing, just an awesome effort across everything they compete in. Silth now taking what was at one point less than a second gap, turning it into a 4-second gap, just pushing after Marshall 88 came into the pit lane. Battle between Ethanol and Grant continues. And Clint, who I don't believe was affected by the disconnections, currently sitting in P3 in AM. And if this is the official race result, Peachy is just one spot away from the AM win and a podium in the overall. Battle cycles by Mustang of Lynch, the number 63. Ethanol and Grant just continuing their battle, this for P11 overall, P5 in AM. Grant getting a very good run. Just not getting close enough through the long right-hander. Just sitting in the slipstream of Ethanol, maybe trying to time the move or just really just trying to get as close as possible. Just inching ever so much closer. I think Ethanol just making that Mercedes very, very wide to try and hold on to the position as best he can. These two have been running nose to tail for quite some time now. I believe the podium pretty much set as long as there are no further incidents. Big bite of that sausage curve on the inside of the final turn from Ethanol is going to give Grant at least some sort of an advantage coming down the long straight. Grant wants to try and drive it the long way around the outside. Grant just goes a bit too deep off into the grass, and it's a long way to try and find your way back to the racing surface. And Ethanol will likely now just be able to run away with the position. So I believe as it stands right now, we'll have to see how everything comes back together. I believe Sylph, as the results I believe are going to be frozen at the time of disconnection, will take home the win regardless, but with a couple laps left to go, he is perfectly fine staying out and continuing to take this one the right way. I believe Marshall 88 will get P2 and Nico Mimi will get P3. It's possible that Danny Dive Bomb takes P4. We will have to wait and see. And I believe it will be Peachy, Scary, and Clint. P1, 2, and 3. But regardless, anything I say is not official results. But it is going to be discussed in the Discord, and there will be an announcement with the official results in the GoFAST Racing Discord. And what is this? Grant has reeled back Ethanol in the Mercedes. I thought that was a done deal, but no, now Grant is back ahead of Ethanol. Grant just needs to try and make sure that he doesn't overbrake once again. Marshall 88 is reeling Sylph back in once again, but it's just going to be too little too late as we are on the final lap of this race. Sylph leading, Marshall 88 2.3 seconds behind. Peachy not quite going to get the overall podium, at least how it stands right now, as Sylph comes across the line to take the checkered flag. Marshall 88, P2, Nico P3. Peachy will take home P4 and a crucial win in AM. At least as it stands now, I believe Peachy should take home the win in AM regardless. But his P4 finishing position and Radioactive's P5 will be discussed. Goose finishes P6, but again, all positions are provisional, as the official result may differ from the on-screen results tonight. Scary should take home P2 in AM. Very good finish for Scary. And there's some donuts at the end of the straight from Peachy. And Clint, again, should take home a very well-deserved P3 in AM. An awesome podium from Clint in the Ferrari. Really showing how far he has come in terms of his skill. Rabel comes across P4. Grant, P5, and Ethanol P6. But again, all positions are provisional until race control gives the official finishing positions. A very well executed pirouette from the Lexus of Nate. And we will go ahead and raid Jeb Bones. So, again, thank you all for tuning in. Sorry about the disconnection. Official race results will be announced in the Discord server. And we will see you all next week. Have a good night. Signing out from Snetterton.